not a campaign. It's a billion-dollar criminal enterprise. Donald Trump says he's running on law and order.
I am the law and order candidate.
Who's he kidding? Trump's campaign manager is a felon. His deputy campaign manager is a felon. His national security advisor, a felon. His foreign policy advisor is a felon. His personal lawyer is a felon. His longtime personal advisor, a felon. Nixon was bad. Trump is worse. Now, Trump saves Roger Stone. Stone lied to cover up Russian involvement in Trump's campaign to protect Donald Trump. 7 felony convictions.
I am the law and order candidate.
Trump is the most corrupt president in U.S. history. There's only one way to end the Trump crime spree. Throw him and his crooks out of office. On November 3rd, vote for justice. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Call in or text live 414-395-0484. Thought-provoking talk radio covering all topics from local to national and everything in between. It may not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. That's The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Podcasts available on our website, theforum2.com. Check us out. Good morning, welcome to the program. Tuesday, July 14, 2020. You know, I don't really like to start with bad news. But I mean, it's the state of the world, right? So you may consider it bad news. To me, it's just an honest fact of the times that we're living in. All right, so you know this whole thing that's going on. Maybe it's a hoax, maybe it isn't. This whole coronavirus stuff. They're working on a vaccine, which a bunch of y'all are not going to take. We already know you're not going to, so stop pretending that you will. Or the people that will take the vaccine, there won't be enough of them. And here's the thing, I don't necessarily trust, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer. You guys know that. I get a flu shot every year. And whatever vaccines they give you, tetanus, measles, mumps, rubella, I get the vaccines. I'm not using some religious reasons or other reasons to not get a vaccine. But I don't know if I can trust a vaccine that this administration had any hand in creating or funding, so there's that. And also, it takes a really long time to develop a vaccine because I've gone through the stages of how difficult it is to develop a vaccine. First, you test it in animals, and then you have to wait to see what the immune response is to the animals. Does it kill the animals? Do they get really, really sick? Do their eyes fall out of their little animal heads? And then if you have a strain of vaccine, because you got to test a bunch of different ones to see which ones doesn't kill the animals, and then you try it in a limited number of human beings. And then you have to wait to see if those human beings' eyes fall out of their heads or if they get really, really sick. And then you try it on a larger number of people and you try and replicate it as many times as possible so you can see if it is effective, it is dangerous. And then you have to measure the immunity to the coronavirus. So it takes a really long time at each one of those stages. And for them saying they're going to have some kind of vaccine available by the end of this year means they skipped over a bunch of steps. And we know that everybody is different. Some people get the coronavirus and they feel nothing. They have no symptoms whatsoever. Some people have lost entire families. So there's no way that there can be a vaccine that can be 100% effective. Well, there isn't a vaccine that's 100% effective anyway. So that being said, if they get a vaccine, it's going to be a few of y'all that's going to raise your hands right away and get the vaccine. And us black folks are just going to be like, y'all go ahead. But we shouldn't be anti-vaxxers as black folks. As things continue to get worse, we are going to talk about the mask requirement in the city of Milwaukee, which got some of y'all so mad. We're going to be doing social distancing, and this is a reasonable estimate. And I don't even know how well we do it now. But whatever the program and the protocol is for social distancing, like sometimes you do it, like you social distance until you see somebody you haven't seen since before the quarantine, then you hug them. So I guess you social distance until you see your friends or your family. But we're probably going to be doing it in one form or another until the year 2022. The coronavirus, the pandemic, the public health crisis is going to be an issue, a political issue in the midterm election of 2022. Because of the way the cases are escalating now, it will likely take 2 more years at the rate we're going now. And I don't even know what rate we're going at now. 2 years of social distancing. Like a lot of you, I'm concerned about what's going to happen at schools. Schools are going to be opening up in the fall because the president is making them. It's funny how Republicans always talk about local control and they don't want the heavy hand of big government influencing local communities. And that comes from, like the city of Milwaukee, as an example, is a democratically controlled city. And so in some of the outlying areas, even some of the suburban areas within the Milwaukee County metro area, they don't want to be influenced by the heavy hand of the Democrats and their micromanaging of society. So there's this thing called local control. Smaller units of government, smaller towns, smaller areas get to govern and, basically create their own fate instead of having to listen to this big Democratic stronghold that are all a bunch of communists and socialists. But isn't Donald Trump saying forget local control? If there's a school district that says, you know what, we have a number of cases here where doesn't make any sense for us to open, maybe we should stay closed or just do online learning or whatever the case may be. The president is now stepping in and saying the government is telling you that you have to open or there's a chance that you may lose some of your federal education funding. So much for local control. But NPS has come up with a plan where there'll be 2 days, I believe, of classroom learning, and then there will be 3 days of online learning. Even the school buses that hold 72 children now their capacity on the school bus is going to be 12. If you have 72 kids on a school bus, how many more you need? What's the math on that? You need 6 more school buses to hold the amount of children that one school bus used to hold because they've got a social distance. Are kids going to social distance when they get back to school and they haven't seen their friends? When was the last time the kids saw their schoolmates? March? When did somebody know? You guys know. Good morning, everybody. What up, Vaughn Mays? Good morning, sir. L.A. Thomas, good morning. Joel Bishop, good morning. Carolyn Scott, damn, they all felons talking about Donald Trump's homies. Donald Trump has got a crime syndicate, is what he has. But then he's the capo. Like he's the boss, and then he gets to make sure nobody goes to jail. Good morning, Mary Braun. Even though, Mary, technically your last name is German, it should be pronounced Brown, but I'm not going to argue with you about your last name. Sarah Lovern Laguerre, good morning. Vanessa Gary, good morning. Marlon Pitchford, what up, people? What up, Marlon? Charles Reeves, good morning, all. Latasha Fields, good morning, Latasha. Sarah Lovern Laguerre says, the best analogy I've seen for this vaccine is that a recipe for cookies is having raisins substituted for craisins. The scientists aren't starting from scratch. I don't know if I want a craisin in my cookie. I don't want a craisin in a vaccine either. Cassandra D, good morning. Arande, good morning, Falcon. Good morning, Eagle. Nicole Renee, good morning. Eileen Seeger, hi, and good morning to you. So the other thing that's happening is the city of Milwaukee. You know what? I was happy to see this. They did a 15-0 vote. So all members of the Milwaukee Common Council, all 15 of our alders, voted together. And they used to do that all the time. So this is how they show a level of unity that we don't often see in other levels of government. And I would say it's because our Milwaukee Common Council is nonpartisan, but they're not. I know who the conservatives are, and so do you. You guys know who the progressives are, who the liberals, who the moderates are on the Common Council, so that it isn't a partisan thing. But whenever an idea or an ordinance or a proposal has 8 votes, because that's all you need to get it past the council, you need 8 votes. What happens is the other 7 that don't want to vote for the proposal vote for it anyway because they vote for the majority. And so when you see a series of ordinances that get passed on a 15-0 vote, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of those alders wanted that ordinance to be signed by the mayor to actually, because they didn't support it, right? They may be against it, but they're going to vote for it. So it shows unity, meaning that here is something that we all need to take seriously. If our members of the Common Council can vote for anything unanimously, then that means it must be a pretty big significance. And they voted for the mandatory mask requirement in the city of Milwaukee 15-0. Because if it was an 8-7 vote, then people would have said, look, half of the council barely even agrees, so I'm not going to comply. Now, just because there was a 15-0 vote doesn't mean that people are automatically going to comply, because people are already starting to complain. Oh, they're so mad. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But first, let's bask in the anger of the people who are just irate because there's a mandatory mask requirement in the city of Milwaukee. Again, that's local control, so you would think the Republicans would like that, the city of Milwaukee making a decision for its own residents, its own citizens. It's the same people are mad about the mask requirement that were really upset about the streetcar. I wasn't happy about the Milwaukee streetcar. They called it the trolley, the train to nowhere. It's basically this toy, a very expensive one that travels on a very limited 2.5-mile route through downtown, and it doesn't connect people to where jobs and employment are, which is what public transportation is supposed to do. But the whole streetcar thing, I'm not going to bring that up because I could talk about that forever. So the people that were trying to like stop the streetcar and recall the mayor and talk about how much of a political and financial boondoggle the streetcar was didn't live in Milwaukee. They didn't live here. It's amazing how a generation ago, all of these people left the city of Milwaukee because it was becoming a more and more of a minority city. Like the white flight, they left because black folks were coming here, to work. Even though black folks are considered lazy, we were coming to Milwaukee to work. And so a lot of white folks, they left the city. Then the city started getting fun. Then we started getting new stuff and tall buildings, and the Bucks got a new house to play in, and now they're mad about the city. And so anything the city does while they're in their suburban enclaves, bored out of their minds, they get mad. And so if the city of Milwaukee has a mandatory mask requirement and you don't live in the city, don't come. Right? Isn't that pretty simple? Like, oh, I don't want to wear a mask because something coronavirus hoax, or Donald Trump doesn't wear a mask. And if the city of Milwaukee, which is such a cesspool, and it's all these black people, and it's a lot of protests. Here, let me say this to the suburbanites, because I know there's some listening. If you are a suburbanite and you're afraid of the city of Milwaukee, you should be, because when you get here, all we're going to do is probably throw rocks at your car. We're going to just start fires. Every street you go down is going to be blocked off. There's going to be police shooting tear gas. So if you're a suburbanite and you don't like the city of Milwaukee because of, all the crime, don't come now because, oh, man. In fact, when I just look out my window right here, all I see is smoke. So to the suburbanites, your fears are justified. Don't come to the city of Milwaukee because, murder. And also, even worse than all of those things I just mentioned as to why you shouldn't come to the city of Milwaukee, a mask requirement. But before you get all bent out of shape about the mask requirement, I'm going to give you a few more details about it. Star Xavier Mom, good morning, everyone. Marlon Pitchford says, this morning they said they are going to open schools in phases, 1 virtual, 2 a few days in person, few virtual, 3 all in. Yeah, that's the plan for MPS. And it's a forced kind of opening, because I think if you just left it up to the school board, because we have a unit of government that are all elected that decide education policy at the local level, but I don't know if this was entirely their idea. I'm sure there was some guidance from the federal government with these required openings of the schools. Jennifer Harder says, I like your headline of this video, or else. Good morning, Jennifer. Yeah, if you don't wear a mask, I'm going to save that for a couple of minutes, because You're going to be in trouble. Sandra B. Holzemhauser, good morning. Orvana Harris, good morning to you as well. All right, so let's get to it. Mandatory mask ordinance passed on a 15-0 vote yesterday from the Milwaukee Common Council. So the mayor is going to sign it, and then the other question. So today, what's today? Tuesday? I think it may arrive on the mayor's desk tomorrow. The mayor signs it. When will the mandatory mask requirement go into effect in the city of Milwaukee? As early as Thursday. This article comes from CBS 58. The Milwaukee Common Council on Monday passed a citywide mask mandate requiring anyone over the age of 3 years old to wear a mask or face covering in public places. The vote was unanimous at 15-0. The plan would require businesses to mandate customers wear masks and refuse to service those who don't. The Milwaukee Police Department will not enforce the policy. Let me say that again. Why are y'all even mad? They're not going to enforce it. If you're not wearing a mask, you know what's going to happen to you? Other than you're going to get coronavirus? Nothing. You're not going to go to jail. You're not going to get tear gassed. You might get shot. But, the police have not been made the agency of enforcement. The health department is. The enforcing body. Now, if you're a business owner, that's a little bit different. I'll get to that in a second. But the police are not enforcing this requirement. So all the people that are big mad over the mask requirement, nothing is going to happen to you except the coronavirus itself. And the fact that you may kill your family when you get the coronavirus and bring it home. The health department is going to enforce it. The health department doesn't have guns. They can't even write tickets. You know what the health department is going to do to enforce it if they just see like a person not wearing a mask in public? Because remember, the city of Milwaukee Health Department, Jeanette Kowalik is our health commissioner. She doesn't have a gun, I don't think. She's going to pull out a stethoscope. Hey! Or a flashlight. Put on a mask. They're not going to do anything. Good morning, Dave. Aaron Crockett, Wauwatosa School District has a virtual academy that is still accepting applications. Lori Patterson, good morning to you as well. The Milwaukee Police Department will not enforce the policy according to Alders. The plan is for the Milwaukee Health Department to monitor businesses and make sure they require customers to wear masks. Quote, if businesses are not abiding by the ordinance, then I think there are going to be a lot of calls to the health department who will be following up with enforcement on that, said Milwaukee Common Council President Cavalier Johnson. Businesses who break the rules could lose their license or receive a $500 fine. Alders gave different answers about whether it's possible to fine a customer who refuses to follow the rules a business establishes. So it's up to the business. And that makes a lot more sense because especially in the bars where people are close together and then they're drinking and they're talking loudly. And some of y'all, I don't know why you do it, you still sing karaoke. And when you're talking and you're singing and then the spray goes everywhere and you just spread Corona flakes all over the place. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, it also is counter and contrary to drinking culture. And then people have a few more drinks and they see people walk in the bar that they haven't seen since before the shutdown. And then they hug them and they're not socially distancing. It's really hard to stop that. Like the genuine human connection that we have, especially if you haven't seen somebody in a long time, the social distancing goes out of the window. That being said, if this establishment is going to make profit and take people's money, and the city of Milwaukee has allowed these businesses to go from 0 capacity to 25% capacity to 50% capacity, and now I don't know if they're at 75. I know some businesses, I'm not going to tell you who, have been operating at full capacity damn near the entire time. A few of them. So it falls on the business owner, because if you're going to be making money and making a profit, shouldn't you require your patrons to follow the rules that can keep folks safe during a pandemic? That makes a lot of sense. Alderwoman Jocasta Zamaripa said the Common Council purposely left enforcement up to the health department instead of the police. There is an outdoor component of the plan requiring people to wear a mask outside of standing within 6 feet of anybody who is not a member of their household. Zamaripa said the outdoor requirement will effectively be on the honor system. So there's no real enforcement. So if you're sitting at a table at a restaurant, because they're really doing a a lot of accommodating of these businesses where they're blocking off certain streets to where now not only is there outside seating on the sidewalk, some of the outside seating goes into the streets, so the streets are blocked off to give these restaurants more capacity, but also adhering to social distancing rules. So if you're hanging out with people in your own family and you're sitting outside, there's no mask. People always just want a reason to get mad at the city of Milwaukee. You know what that is? Because they're jealous they don't live here. Because the suburbs are boring and full of drugs and they wish they were in the city having fun. Well, even though there's not as much fun going on in the city this summer as in previous summers. Quote, we really didn't think it was smart or strategic or safe right now to allow MPD to enforce, Zamaripa said. Johnson said, that must be Cavalier Johnson, Common Council president, said despite the hard consequences for not wearing a mask outside, he believes the proposed ordinance will be effective. There's going to be some social pressure that's involved with this as well, Johnson said. When you see people out there wearing a mask, abiding by the ordinance, that's going to encourage more and more people to abide by it. So I agree with that. The social pressure is a big deal because when I see somebody right now not wearing a mask, because you can't really, because I'm wearing a mask, so you can't really see my face, but don't you, and I'm not the only one. When you go to places where social distancing is hard, where there's a lot of people, and you're wearing a mask like a good human, and then you see people that aren't, I stereotype those people. Justifiably so. If you're out in public not wearing a mask, I'm going to stereotype you down to your New Balance sneakers. And the arrogance of some of these people. What do we got for comments? Health department only gets 3% of the budget and they are in charge of enforcement. That's a good point. You know what it's going to be? Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen because I know my city very, very, very well. There are going to be, I'm going to give you an example of just two. Bar/restaurant, okay? And this particular these two bar/restaurants, maybe they have outdoor seating, oftentimes compete for the same customers, okay? The owners may not like each other because they routinely take each other's customers. One will have a fish fry special, and the other has a fish fry special. One will have get a free pitcher of beer when you buy a pizza. And so they compete. It's all in good fun and good competition, but they're competing businesses, okay? And they've been suffering because they haven't been open over the past 4 months, and this would be a busy season for these restaurants, bar/restaurants that oftentimes compete. Bars and restaurants are going to snitch on each other, right? So here's what's going to happen. They're going to take maybe an employee or a family member, that one of the people that owns Bar A is going to send somebody affiliated and loyal to Bar A over to Bar B, the competing bar, the one that has the cheaper fish fry and the buy a pizza, get a pitcher of beer. And they're going to look around. They're going to have a mask on, so they're going to be disguised, you see. And they're going to say, wait a minute, there's people in Bar B not wearing a mask. And then you know what they're going to do? They're going to go back to Bar A and they're going to say, yep, we saw people in Bar B not wearing a mask. And they're going to take a little cell phone because everybody's a videographer, not everybody's a photographer. They're going to take pictures of the people because this is the sign for taking a picture with your phone. Don't act like you don't know. It's like this is the sign for being on the phone, even though we don't even talk on phones like this no more. Right? Taking pictures. And they're going to send those pictures to the health department to potentially get their competition shut down. And that's going to happen all over the place. So this will be a self-enforcing kind of ordinance because if you're business A and business B, bar/restaurant, is your competition, and they lose their license because they're not adhering to the business, the business portion of the ordinance where you have to police your customers on wearing a mask, then that would be perfect. Now Bar B is gone because they've lost their license and now Bar A is still surviving. I'm not saying that that's exactly how it's going to work, but that makes an awful lot of sense. If you're trying to get every customer you can, especially if you've got reduced capacity, because you may not have had a large establishment to begin with, and you have to social distance, you want as many customers as you possibly can get, moving in and out, more and more people coming in and out of your establishment, right? So you can keep their wallets coming in. If there is a competing business that is not adhering to the ordinance, and you can call the health department and the health department can shut them down. Now, for everybody else, if you're just a citizen out on the street, nothing is going to happen. You're not going to get a fine. Now, the difference would be if MPD was enforcing the mask ordinance. But this is how defunding the police works. And I think when people hear that term, they think, oh, when there's a homicide or there's another violent crime, the police are not going to come. No, it's duties that involve just ordinance enforcement where there is no violent crime taking place. The police don't need to show up to that because the police sometimes are hammers and everything else looks like a nail. Because imagine the arguments that someone may have with a rank and file cop. If we had the citywide mask ordinance enforced for every individual person out on the street. Got a couple of kids that are walking home from the store, because that's always when the police seem to murder our kids, when they're walking home from the store. And then the cop says, hey, kids, get over here. I'm going to write you a ticket for not wearing a mask. Imagine the disagreement and the argument that can take place and how those young people, or even adults, will not want to go into police custody. Now they're resisting arrest. Now one of them accidentally kicks the officer. Now that's felony assault of a police officer. These are the problems that you have when the Milwaukee Police Department and other police departments enforce ordinances that already started out as trying to mitigate something that was non-violent to begin with. Tammy Reed says, I'm late, but good morning. Good morning, Tammy. Better late than never. L.A. Thomas, I feel some type of way when I see people without a mask. Judge them. Make them feel the social pressure, but don't get into a fight with them. Like, don't fight. A couple other things, switching gears here a little bit. We are concerned about, well, I'm going to say we, because hopefully I'm not the only one, about the mail-in voting system and the inconsistencies we saw. So in limited numbers, in any other election, there's always going to be a number of people that vote by mail. Always. There's a permanent absentee ballot list. If my memory serves me correctly, prior to this year, there was like 3,500 people. It was less than 4,000 people in the city of Milwaukee that receive all of their ballots for every election by mail like clockwork. It was about 4,000 people, give or take. Well, that list has undoubtedly grown. And so if you have an election where only 4,000 people, give or take, are voting by mail, then it doesn't overload the post office. But when you have 50% or more, I think it was, I can't remember what the exact voter turnout in April was, but there was a disproportionate number of people who were voting by mail. And it overloaded the post office. And so the 1% error rate that the post office may have gets exacerbated because if one ballot out of 100 does not get delivered or is lost or is mishandled, multiply that times 200,000 people and you have a significant number of lost votes and very unhappy voters. So there's an article that appears in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel talking about and referencing the inconsistencies of vote by mail, because I told you guys I'm going to go and vote in person. If I have to put on a hazmat suit and like a helmet and have a fire hose with me, I don't know what I'm going to need to go vote. Then I'm going to do that, because if there are 182 polling sites open on August 11th and then on November 3rd, November 3rd is going to be a whole different story. But August 11th is not expected to be a large turnout election. Then it's much easier to social distance at the polls if all 182 of them are open. So I'm not really worried about it. In fact, some of the errands that I may run on any particular day will probably be more people than will be voting on August 11th. So I don't have an issue with voting in person. But as we move toward November, this is going to be troublesome also because we don't know where the coronavirus is going to be in the state of Wisconsin. We don't know where it's going to be nationwide. We don't know what the protocols are going to be. We're not sure. So there's going to be a heavy reliance on vote by mail. From Madison, Wisconsin, the U.S. Postal Service has identified hundreds of absentee ballots for the April election that never made it to voters or couldn't be counted because of postmark problems, a new report says. The post office's internal watchdog chalked the problems up to receiving outgoing ballots at the last moment from election officials, inconsistent postmarking of the ballots, and one mail carrier's inattention. I know how they said one mail carrier's inattention to getting absentee ballots to voters in Fox Point. That was not the only place. I know a lot of people that work for the post office. Lots of them. And they all do different things at the post office, right? And so if there's someone who is in charge of, I don't know, getting this box of ballots to the sorter, sometimes that didn't happen. Or there were ballots that fell out of the bin that were lost. The election was over when they found the ballot, so it was too late. And then there's the inconsistencies of people filling their ballot out wrong, not getting their envelope witnessed by somebody else, because you got to have the actual envelope of your ballot witnessed by another person. And then the ballots that were spoiled, people that just voted wrong. There's all of that. But if the post office is now admitting to its faults when the turnout in the April election was nothing even close to what the presidential election is going to be, imagine if 300 or 400,000 people are voting by mail just in the city of Milwaukee, not to mention potentially 3 million people voting by mail statewide. Even if there's a 1% failure rate, this is a disaster, or it very well could be. And I don't know if there are any policy changes or any additional resources coming from the federal government that are going to make sure that we have a vote by mail system that is 100% accurate. The 17-page report by the Postal Service's Inspector General accounts for some, but not all, of the problems that marred voting for the April election for the state Supreme Court. Nearly 1 million people turned to mail voting because of the coronavirus pandemic. The report offers a cautionary tale for Wisconsin and other states as election officials brace for record-shattering absentee ballot requests in the fall. Clerks and voters across Wisconsin reported a host of problems, and the Inspector General's report touches on 4 of them. Fox Valley is a part of Wisconsin where it is Green Bay, Appleton, Oshkosh, Neenah, Menasha, and Fond du Lac. So it's a strip of cities and towns that border between Green Bay and Lake Winnebago. Fox Valley ballots didn't get to voters on time. 3 mail tubs containing 749 ballots from the Fox Valley didn't get to voters in time for them to cast them. Appleton officials had given the absentee ballots to a third-party mail vendor on April 6th, the day before the election, according to the report. The mail vendor provided them to the post office at about 6 p.m. on election day. That meant the absentee ballots couldn't be delivered to voters until after the election. Too late to be filled out, returned, and counted. Completed ballots had to be postmarked by election day and received by clerks by April 13th. The State Elections Commission has identified about 1,600 ballots that didn't get to voters from the Fox Valley, and the report did not say why it focused on a smaller number of ballots. So because the population in Fox Valley cities and towns is so much smaller, 1,600 ballots changed the outcome of an election. If somebody is running for alderperson or for county supervisor in the Fox Valley and 1,600 ballots never got delivered or did not get counted, the wrong person may have won that election. We need to be really, really concerned about this. And so here's the thing, and I want you all to vote, but I also need your votes to be counted. Now more than ever, I really want your votes. I mean, I always want your votes to be counted, but now I really, really want them to be counted. Good morning, Renee. Good morning, David. Will the police use the non-enforcement policy selectively? Not sure what you're referring to, David. If you're talking about the mask ordinance, the police are not enforcing that at all. I want you guys to vote in person. I understand why you may not want to. But how many times do we have to experience the inconsistencies with the post office? And there's more examples in the article. There's more. I put up a post in the Forum Facebook group where they are looking for poll workers. And the pay is not bad. I mean, there's obviously risks involved, but it's not. And so they ran into what I thought was a problem we could have solved in April. A number of poll workers, because at that time in April, the coronavirus was on its first upswing. And a lot of our poll workers in the city of Milwaukee are older. And I totally get why they wouldn't want to risk their health and safety to administer the April election. February election, we had a February primary in Wisconsin, that was fine. The April election was literally right in the middle of it. And us being geniuses here in Wisconsin, we decided to move forward with the election anyway. And so there were a number of poll workers that said, you know what, too much risk for me, for my family. I'm not going to show up to administer the election. Okay. So the city of Milwaukee did some recruiting to find additional poll workers, and we all, and thank you guys for helping, assisted in finding additional people. There was a telephone number, there was an email address. If you were available to help in a variety of different capacities, making sure that people were social distancing, making sure that that there were lanes set up for voters who were in line, whatever the case may be. So the city of Milwaukee was looking for a number of people. Well, they never told us how many people that they were going to be looking for. And we were all under the impression that every polling site, because if you're going to have the election, then have the election. Don't play with us. Or don't have it. You can't half-ass an election. Well, if anybody can half-ass an election, we can. But if you're going to have an election, have an election. You need people? We'll get you people. You need poll workers? Oh, we'll get you poll workers. We'll get you alternate poll workers. In case the alternate poll workers get sick, we got alternates to the alternates. So we did an effort to recruit poll workers. I get a telephone call, and I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it till forever. Hey, Sherwin, this is so-and-so from the Election Commission. Can you take down your social media posts looking for additional poll workers? We were only looking for 50 people, and we got 150. I was like, oh, this is great. Wonderful. I didn't know that the city, and none of us knew, that the city had already made the decision to only have 5 polling locations open for the entirety of the city of Milwaukee. There's 600,000 people in this city. The April 7th election was for a state Supreme Court race and a presidential primary, and they only had 5 polling locations open. If factors warrant you only being able to have 5 polling locations open in person on election day, then you cannot have an election. To go from 182 to 5 means you cannot have an election. It's going to be wrought with issues. They were only looking for poll workers and volunteers and additional staff for 5 polling locations. We were recruiting for 182. Now, they've also put out a similar call for election day workers, and I am going to assume, because if they do it again, we're going to have to sue them, that they're going to have, I've been told that they don't want to go through that debacle again. They've learned a great lesson, and also the presidential contest is one of paramount importance where they're going to have all 182 polling locations open. So if you go to the forum Facebook group, you'll see the posting, and then it has the different positions they're looking for and the rates of pay. Some of the rates of pay are not that bad. Now, there's additional risks, of course, being an election day worker coming up in either August or November, potentially both. So please be mindful of that. Hey, Sherwin, can I still be a poll worker if I'm still on paper? Ooh. David, you don't have to be an eligible voter to be a poll worker, do you? Don't quote me, because they change the rules and the laws all the time. David, I would call the election commission to find out. I mean, they shouldn't be picky, unless, like, your felony is for voter fraud. If you committed a voter fraud felony, then I'd imagine that might disqualify you from being a poll worker. Cassandra D says, I applied for the poll worker and I received a call last week. I declined because of the COVIDs. I guess I get it, Sandra. All right. David Boxhorn said, against the protesters. Let me read your other comment, David. Will the police use the non-enforcement policies selectively? I have no idea what the cops are going to do against the protesters. So there's a list. Urban Milwaukee did a story on the things that the Milwaukee Police Department is requesting for the DNC convention, which should have started yesterday. Right? No, today. yesterday the original incarnation of the DNC should have started yesterday with 50,000 people at the Fiserv Forum and Democrats all over the place, just drunk and spilling beer. Because when Democrats get together, it's a party. So that would have started yesterday if it wasn't for the pandemic, and they pushed it to, I think, August. I have the story. August 14th or August 15th is going to be next month, and it's going to be drastically scaled down. The mayor declined to give details on how many people he believes are going to be at the scaled down convention, but it's going to be. In fact, the only person that might be here is Joe Biden by himself, because all the delegates, the people that vote on the platform, and the people that vote for the technical nominees, where Joe Biden goes from the presumptive nominee to the Democratic nominee for the party, they're all voting virtually. So no one from Oregon, Washington, California, Utah, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, they're not coming to Milwaukee, where before they were all coming. They're not coming now. But Joe Biden said he's going to be here. Probably just by himself. L.A. Thomas, I'll go get a beekeeper outfit to go vote in. You think she's playing? Y'all, L.A. Thomas is not playing. Listen, if I saw somebody in a beekeeper outfit, because that means they're taking this thing seriously, you know what I would give them? I'd give them a black power fist. Shout out to my person over there wearing a beekeeper suit. Cassandra D, we already read your comments. Hey, Sherwin, can I still be a poll worker if still on paper? Can somebody find that out for David, if you can be a poll worker if you're on paper? Judy Brown says, I understand the risk of mailing in our ballot, but what about dropping it off when early voting starts? Yes, you can do that. Be prepared for long lines. So in April, one of the drop-off locales was at the municipal building, so just east of Milwaukee City Hall. People were in line for an hour in their cars. So just, I guess, be prepared for that. But I'm also speculating. I'm trying to base what we saw at its worst, which was April, and I'm trying to use that as a reference point for what November is going to be like. We have no idea. And also, Trump is not just going to let this election happen. He has had a heavy-handed influence in anything and everything that can affect him. If you look at where he is his most afraid, when he is at his most absolute erratic and unpredictable, it's something that can affect him. His impeachment or something against his idea or his policy or his rally or people in his inner circle, that is when he goes ballistic. And first, he's got stages he goes through. First, he gives a scatterbrained press conference. Then he takes to Twitter for the next 24 to 48 hours. Then he has some announcement. Then there's some action that he takes as president of the United States, or then he makes a bunch of threats. He's going to pull their funding. He's going to make it a federal crime to take down a statue. Something that affects him or his base is when he gets the most erratic. Of all the things that we have seen, okay, nothing is going to affect him more personally, professionally, and politically, because you know that if Donald Trump does not win the November election, come January 20th, when Joe Biden is inaugurated, Donald Trump can be subject to prosecution and arrest. Donald Trump doesn't want to be president because it's too much reading. It is. It's too much. He just doesn't want to read a lot, including when he gets briefings saying that Russians were putting bounties on American soldiers. And some of y'all have the nerve to get mad at somebody kneeling peacefully, but don't say anything when Russians were offering cash payments to the Taliban to murder American soldiers. Y'all don't support the troops. Can we stop with that? You guys want to stop now, or do you want to keep going? You don't support the troops. Trump is going to be at his most erratic when it comes to something that can affect him directly. Nothing is going to affect him directly like this election. Trump sees the poll numbers. Whether he understands math is another thing, but he knows that the state of Texas, when I saw this, I actually got some hope. Texas is competitive. Texas is the reddest state. Texas is so red that no candidates that are running for president ever have to campaign in Texas. Hillary Clinton might have gone to Texas for a fundraiser, but she would not spend money advertise and hire staff in the state of Texas because it is so red. Trump is up like a single point in Texas. Trump would realistically have to campaign in the state of Texas. The number of electoral votes. So if the maps remain the same as they were in 2016 and Joe Biden sneaks out Texas, the election is over. Donald Trump is now having to deal with a Joe Biden that is competitive in the deep red South. That has to make Trump nervous. If not him, I think the people that communicate to him, the people that Trump hires to read for him or to read to him, probably say, hey, Mr. President, we got some things going on in Texas. We should probably consider some action. But that's good, because if Donald Trump has to defend territory that is traditionally red that would hand him an electoral college victory, I think that shows a changing tide in the nation. But Trump is not done. He's not going to just go quietly into that good night. He isn't, and that's what I'm concerned about. So all we can do right now is look at past elections and past erratic behavior from the president. I think as November gets nearer, he is going to become more erratic. His niece, you guys know about his niece? She's a clinical psychologist, and her tell-all book is released today. And the Trump administration tried to sue to block the publishing of this book. For all of you constitutionalists that, believe in the Constitution or whatever you say, the most basic premise of the First Amendment and freedom of speech means the government can't stop you from speaking your truth, from saying what you want to say. Now, freedom of speech gets taken out of context. Like, you can't go to your boss and stand on your boss's desk and say, screw you, boss, I hate you, and then claim freedom of speech. No. Freedom of speech means you can say screw you to the government, and the government can't throw you in prison. They can't throw you in a gulag like they would do in Soviet Russia. The most fundamental violation of the U.S. Constitution is on full display, and no one is saying anything. And it's either because loyalty to Donald Trump is so blind that we are a fascist nation, or people don't know what the Constitution is or how it actually works. The government can't, if you want to write a book, the government can't say, I don't like your book because you're telling things that we don't like as a government. You can't publish the book. So a federal judge says you can't do that. You can't block Donald Trump's niece from writing a book and then selling it. It's a tell-all, and it goes deeper than any other manuscript or any other publication about Trump, because she is a clinical psychologist and she goes very deep. And she said, look, I witnessed it. I'm Donald Trump's niece. My grandfather, and she knew her uncle, Donald Trump's dad, Fred Trump, very, very well. And she does this incredible analysis. And they've been leaking excerpts of the book for the past couple of weeks. And when they tried to block the book, when Donald Trump tried to sue to block the book, all they did was make sales go up. If there is something being written by a member of Trump's family that's on our side of history, that's also a psychologist, that's going to give a detailed analysis of how screwed up the whole family is, when you try to block that book, people are going to really want to read it. It's going to be in the New York Best Time seller list within 24 hours, I guarantee that. And trying to use executive power and authority to stop someone from publishing a book is probably one of the most gross violations of people's First Amendment rights. But nobody is saying anything about it. What do we got here? Tammy Reed is replying to Judy. That would be ideal, I imagine. David Velasco Johnson says he'll do some digging. Aaron Crockett, I was going to make so much paper off them dancing Dems. Say la vie. Man, listen. Because the Dem convention would have been a big old vacation. Let me say about Milwaukee in case you don't know. We don't often get along with each other here in the city. In fact, there's still some tension between the African-American North Side and the white South Side. There's still some long, multi-generational history of just, we make each other a little uneasy still to this day. But when we have company, when Milwaukee has a Harley Davidson festival or Summerfest or other things that attract national and sometimes international attention, we know how to act in front of company. That's one thing that we do very, very well, because people that come to this city for the first time, they always say the same thing. They say first they say it's so clean. That's because we cleaned up before y'all got here. You know how you have that junk drawer when you can't put everything away and you don't put everything in storage. You got company coming. Put everything in the junk drawer, in the junk closet. Just whatever you do, don't open the junk closet door because you're gonna die because you're gonna get avalanched with stuff. So they always say the city is so clean. Another thing they say, and this is the one that really gets me. Oh my God, the people in Milwaukee are so nice. I'm like, nice to who? We were nice to you because we welcome visitors here because we like tourist money. Because tourist money means you'll pay $7.99 for a really fancy hamburger in your town where you live, and maybe that's like the extent of it. You'll pay $7.99 for a good burger. You on vacation, you'll pay $15 for that burger. Why? Because that's a vacation burger. Don't we always justify spending ridiculous and ungodly amounts of money when we're on vacation? Hold on, how much is it? $37. I'm on vacation. I'll buy it. Tammy Reed and how quickly that dang Russian bounty story disappeared. Shaking my head, that's a problem. You know, it doesn't even... I don't think it even matters. There isn't anything at this point that Donald Trump can say or do that would really shock anybody. And that's a bad place to be at. He is also setting a precedent. Future corruption may be defensible. And we're going to have future corrupt presidents that are smarter than Donald Trump. Imagine if we had a president as corrupt as him that actually knows how to read and knows how to better manipulate the law. Or a future president that was as corrupt as him, smarter than him, and knows how to read and tweeted less. Donald Trump telecommunicates his intentions. The next Trump-like president, the next fascist that comes along, because now it's easy, because now there's a blueprint for how you can manipulate people with certain rhetoric in this country. Somebody else is going to do it. We hope they don't get elected, but can't predict anything in America anymore. And they can say, well, look, Donald Trump said this back in 2017. And then in 2018, Donald Trump did this. And then in 2019, Donald Trump removed this federal judge from this particular case. But then also in 2020, Donald Trump commuted a bunch of sentences of people that were given federal felonies, which means that the next president that does it can say, Donald Trump did it and there were no consequences, so you can't start by punishing me. The presidency right now is wide open for the taking, including foreign governments, because we still have yet to issue a proportional response to the acts of aggression against the American people and against our democracy from a number of nations, Russia being the biggest. We have not satisfied enough of the American public with a proportional response to how they manipulated our election in 2016. Tammy Reed says, shucks, and they thought Beto could do something to turn it blue. That's a lot of red to overcome. Oh, I forgot about Beto. What's he doing? Because he was a congressman, right? Then he wasn't. Then he just became a full-time presidential candidate. He had a number of troubling issues. Did you guys know that Beto wrote a murder fantasy? Now he was, I guess it shouldn't matter because there's no statute of limitations on murder. Now he didn't murder anybody, but he wrote a book or something he wrote, a blog post, and he was, younger, so that's the excuse that they use. Oh, I was young. I didn't know murder was wrong. And he described in great detail of running people over with his car. I'm not kidding you. And so Beto had a bit of a buzz surrounding him. He was one of those buzzy candidates. He was, like, his first name was Mexican, but then his last name was Irish, so he was this weird combination of stuff. Whatever. And, he was attractive and, younger, and he brought a different perspective to things, whatever. But when I read the story about his murder fantasy, I'm like, you can't be president. Unless, and there were some people that heard of it, that knew of his murder fantasy. He's talking about being in a car and seeing some people in the street and running them over. You know that actually happens, right? There have been people that have been killed protesting because they've been hit by cars. Charlottesville is one. And most recently in, where were they? With a woman, and they showed the video, and the woman, she died. I think Washington maybe, or Oregon. And so Beto had published his murder fantasy. And at that point, I don't care how many rallies he had or how many supporters he had or how much money he was raising. Someone that had a murder fantasy that actually wrote it and published it on the internet, because we've had enough crazy presidents. Kathy Wortman, I'm not going to try and pronounce that last name. It's Katie. Looks like anyone with a felony conviction can't work the polls. Shady. Sorry, David. Where are we at here? Oh, no, here's one for you. And then I'm going to be on time today. I'm only going to do 1 hour today. So the DNC convention was supposed to start yesterday because of the pandemic. It's been pushed back to August, which I'm not sure that's going to do much good. This is a story that appears in Urban Milwaukee. It says, even though the footprint will be smaller, speaking of this DNC convention, that says nothing to the amount of protesters, agitators, white supremacists, you name it, said the assistant police chief, Michael Brunson. So for some reason, the MPD is preparing for a bunch of agitators and protesters at the DNC convention that's going to be just about non-existent. Many of the bidding specifications, so the City of Milwaukee Police Department needs a lot of additional resources to be prepared for the DNC convention. But I don't think anybody has told them that the DNC convention is probably just going to be Joe Biden and his wife. It's going to be scaled down. But the City of Milwaukee, the police department, is preparing for a large, full-scale convention with protesters and agitators and the need for tear gas and tear gas delivery systems. And so they are putting out bids, these requests for proposals, meaning that if you have a business that sells tear gas, the City of Milwaukee Police Department would like to hear from you. The story goes on to say many of the bidding specifications give you an example of the size of the expected event. For instance, the city is looking to rent 32,750 aluminum barricades. A security zone is expected to encompass much of West Town, even as the event has been switched from the Fiserv Forum to the Wisconsin Center. So as an example, the Fiserv Forum is where the Milwaukee Bucks play. The Wisconsin Center is where the auto show is. Big difference in size. Fiserv Forum, 19,000 people. The Wisconsin Center, 200 cars. So there's a difference in size. The city's bid request indicates that the police department anticipates spending over $50,000 on at least 13 different contracts. That includes open requests for quotations of 50 tactical ballistic vests with tactical pouches, 40 handheld radios, combat trauma system medical bags and supplies, and 4,000-pound concrete barriers. The department is also seeking technology upgrades to its emergency operations center. Now, this is for a scaled-down DNC convention that's going to be held in the same building as the auto show. The contract requests indicate the department intends to keep the officers on site well hydrated. This is the best one here. This part coming up, this is the best. Bid requests are out to buy 134,416.9 ounce bottles of water and 50,420 ounce bottles of Gatorade or Powerade for a police force estimated to be of about 4,000 officers. The contract requests indicate the department intends to keep officers on site well hydrated. Bid requests are out to buy 134,416.9 ounce bottles of water and 50,420 ounce bottles of Gatorade or Powerade for a police force originally estimated at approximately 4,000 officers. So when we talk about defunding the police, you're not getting 134,400 bottles of water. Remember what your mama used to say, y'all? You better get your ass to the sink and turn on the faucet. You better drink that faucet water. Police, you don't need 134,000 bottles of water. You better get a garden hose. Somebody turn the garden hose on at the Wisconsin Center when the cops get thirsty. What, you too good to drink out of a garden hose? Stop playing with me. On a real hot day, you remember, hey, Sherwin, can we come in the house and get some Kool-Aid? Mama said you got to turn on the garden hose. And that water was good. It came out real hot at first, but it had that metal taste to it. It tasted like... So defunding the police is cutting unnecessary resources. Now, I could see them making a case if we were going to have a really large, full-scale convention. But we're not. The venue that they've scaled it down to is probably holds a tenth of the people. Defunding the police means you're not going to get 134,000 bottles. And hold on. And they need 50,000 bottles of either Powerade or Gatorade. Y'all are not athletes. See, I knew y'all remember the garden hose. Like the police are too. Defunding the police means drink some of that Milwaukee water. Get a garden hose. All right, that's enough. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. I don't know if we have really accomplished a lot today. No, I think we did, right? Somewhat. Have a good day. See you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time.